Hello.
Hello.
I hope you're doing good. I hope it's a good day. Um,
It's an even better day now that I'm hanging out with you, Beth.
yeah. Um, so I thought based on the episodes before we were talking about where the threshold module and how it has lots of buttons and how actually sometimes it's just like the one right button is like makes your image analysis task so much easier. That we'd spend a couple more episodes actually talking just about this one module. Because threshold is like where you live and die in image analysis, especially if you're doing classical segmentation. So I mean like not Cellpose, not Stardust, not instance egg, but like good old identify primary objects. So it's a super important module. Um, and if you know exactly how to use it, like your image analysis gets so much better so fast. Um, so uh, to keep it from being like overwhelmingly mathy, we're going to talk about just a couple of the settings about the threshold module today, and we'll talk about a couple more in a future episode. All right, shall we dig in?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, I have
Not
one
overwhelmingly
slide.
mathy manner.
Yes, there will be no math.
No math.
No
Ooh,
math. There
wow.
there will be concepts of a math, but
Okay.
not
Concepts
but
of
not
math. Okay.
math.
I'm here. I'm here for that. We can do concepts of a math.
All right. So, if we have an image that is a fluorescence image, and we look at the histogram of the pixel intensity values. So we say, like, these are dim pixels and these are super bright pixels, and we just count how many dim pixels are there, how many bright pixels there are. Um, Often you will end up with something that looks like this. You have lots of dim pixels and a few bright pixels. Now, of course, the relative ratio of those things is going to depend how much bright stuff is in your picture. But like, this is as mathy as we get. Um, and so, because this is ultimately kind of as mathy as we need to get, because all thresholding essentially comes down to if I am trying to fit curves, and you don't need to understand how, but if you just are trying to fit curves onto this, where do you draw the line? Like, where do you say, like, this curve falls and this curve falls? And like, different algorithms will do different maths and will come up with different answers. Now, if there was one true way of staining things, that would be bad. Like we would have one and we would only use it. But but thankfully biology is weird and wild and wonderful and staining looks lots of totally different ways. And so there's different algorithms we can pick from that depending on the exact shape of this histogram will be the right one for us. And so, choice of which algorithm you're going to use, and again, you really don't need to understand the math. Um, but if you understand what certain ones are good for and not good for, that will often be the difference between your image analysis going super quickly and super easily versus being like super painful. Um, and so I'm just gonna list the ones that CellProfiler uses. CellProfiler also has manual thresholding, though, like it's pretty rare you would ever want to use that. I generally do not suggest you manually threshold things, except for like very particular cases that we will not go into. But if assuming that you're just like trying to separate like parts of your image that have stuff versus not stuff, you want an algorithmic threshold. And the default in CellProfiler, if you've ever used CellProfiler in identify primary objects with no threshold being shown and just like advanced settings set to no, what it's using is something called minimum cross entropy. And minimum cross entropy is good for when there's readily identifiable foreground and background. If it looks super different between the two, probably you want either minimum cross entropy or you want Otsu, which was previously the default in CellProfiler, is still the traditional two-class Otsu, really, really good, especially if there's very little sort of variability in both your background and your foreground. But what's really fun about Otsu is it comes in two flavors. It comes in two-class flavor and three-class flavor. And the three-class flavor, I'll just quickly draw on my own slide for a second. Uh, let's get a nice. Oh, no, I don't want a vanishing pen. I want just a pen. Pen. Um, so what if my histogram looked like this instead?
Hmm.
Um, so this might be like background autofluorescence and then like your actual signal.
Yeah,
Or this might be like background, your dim cells and your bright cells, right? And so like depending on your biology, like you might want to draw the threshold here, you might want to draw the threshold here. And with three class Atsu, you can do that. You can say, hey, look, there's going to be three peaks there. Try to find three peaks and actually like either put the middle one as signal or put the middle one as background.
I love
And
three class Otsu.
yeah.
I just got to throw it out there. Like that is my yeah, that
Hmm.
if anything, if I'm struggling, I'm like, all right, let's just I'm
Hmm.
having a rough time. Like let's just start with a three class Otsu and see if that fixes it. And like
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, I love me a good three class Otsu. Just putting that
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah. We're the kind of people who have favorite thresholding algorithms.
Yeah, totally. In case there was any confusion about how big of nerds we are, like,
Yeah.
yes, we do have favorite thresholding algorithms.
Yeah. Mine actually, because I used to work on a lot of speckly stuff, and I'll show you some speckly stuff in just a second, is actually robust background, which is a thresholding method that Anne Carpenter just like vibe invented when she was making CellProfiler. So robust background is great if most of your image is background. So this like fitting two curves or three curves or whatever like trick can get really hard if like only like 1 or 2% of your image is signal and the rest of it is background. And so what the robust background method does, and again, you don't have to sort of like be super clear on the math, but you can just know it says, I'm going to ignore that whole right side of the histogram. I'm only going to fit this peak here. And then I'm going to say like, okay, let's go a couple standard deviations above this background noise. And just if it's much, much brighter than the background, which there's tons of, then probably it's the real signal. So it doesn't actually try to look for signal at all. It just says, hey, what can I know about the background?
And I think we talked about this a little bit also in our Sparkle slash
Hmm.
Speckle episode a while
Hmm.
back. So we can drop that link in show notes too.
Yes. Well, which is exactly the images that I was just about to pull
Oh
up.
my
So
God.
thank you for the excellent, excellent segue.
Look at that segue.
It's like we planned it or something.
Yeah,
We really didn't. We actually really
definitely.
did not.
I had no idea.
Um, so here are our images from our Speckles slash Sparkles episode. And if you think back to that episode, we had some images that were nuclei, and we had some images that were speckly. Those are both channel one. Um, Let me change. So super, super good cell profiler pro tip here. If you're looking at something and like the channels are just all like really dim, you can go to settings and you can change the normalization. Um, so if you put it in like log normalization, and I'm gonna just like completely guess a number here, often something like 20 is good, then stuff seems brighter. And then if stuff is too bright, yeah, so now that's too bright. So now I'm gonna have to like drop that number down. I can actually check in my contrast thing like what a good number would be. Um, 3, whatever. 3 is fine. Um, oh, now this is stuck under the zoom bar. Let's go. I think the other one is a little dimmer, so I'm gonna go with 5, but Anyway, so now we can see nuclei and we can see speckly stuff. Great. So this is actually the same pipeline
Oh,
that I used. I just took out all of the modules we didn't need here. And if I do identify primary objects on my nuclei, I just said if I'm using the sort of advanced settings being off, that's minimum cross entropy. And if I hit step,
look at that.
beautifully identified nuclei.
Beautiful.
Um, I said when there's lots of like good signal to noise, Otsu is usually also pretty good, two class Otsu. If I do two class Otsu here, also still
That's
beautifully identified nuclei.
gorgeous nuclei.
Yeah. Um, those settings often behave super similarly, though I will definitely show you in a second some cases where they don't. Um, but for our speckles here, um, most of our signal is background, and so we definitely want the robust background module. And so what this is doing is it's saying, let's take the mean and standard deviation of the histogram of this image, which you can see is like a big line with nothing, and look for the mean and standard deviation of the histogram, and then say, here we picked a super, because these are really great, gorgeous, bright spots on a really dim background, because we've used enhance or suppress features to make it that way. Um, then I say I can go 10 standard deviations above the mean. And again, I promise like only concepts of math. Make this number bigger if the thing isn't strict enough, and make the number smaller if it's too strict. And you'll notice that most of the explanations in the CellProfiler like settings are all sort of like that. It's about like how do you fix different categories of problems. It's not usually like here's the equation for standard deviation. It's like use standard deviation versus median deviation in certain situations. So the settings are written to try to help be like super practical. Um, if I had used Otsu here, because Otsu isn't right for images that look like this, um, of course, like in this one case, it is fine. But if I had used it not on the enhanced image, but just like before I had done the enhancement and I had picked Otsu, um, now I get insanity,
Mhm.
um, versus with robust background, even when this isn't as clean, this should still be better than, yeah. So now this is still picking out some of the speckles that we want, also some crud, because we haven't done crud filtering, which we did in the enhance or suppress features. But even with all of this background there, it's getting only the things that we care about. And if I adjusted the diameter settings a little bit, I right now have discard things outside the diameter range to no, because that's what it was set to in the previous pipeline. If I dropped that back to yes, now we've lost all the crazy stuff. And even with a lot of background, we're still mostly only getting the speckles we want. Um, so that one choice of like which algorithm to use is like the difference between success and failure.
I love it.
Mhm. Yeah, so that feels like enough math for one episode. Though again, please do if you're looking at if you're like, I'm not really sure what to do with like the settings. This is probably like which thresholding algorithm should I use is probably the longest help text in Cellprofiler settings. Um, but it has these like thumbs up, thumbs downs of like, this is when you should use this. Like, this is what it's good for. This is what it's not good for. It's really trying to not be mathy, but instead to be like very practical.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's biologists that wrote
Mhm.
this, not
Mhm.
computer programmers. So it's, it
Yeah.
is us saying like, hey, when I use this tool, I am a user of this tool and this is what I know about it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Anything else we should add?
I know, I think that's a great,
Oh, I forgot to show you three class Atsu. Give me 1 second and then
okay.
I'll
I will do. Yeah, I will wait for three class Otsu again. Like remember, I have
Mhm.
favorites.
Mhm. So here I'm going to show you some cell painting images, which You may have seen our recent episodes about cell painting. Um, and I'm going to specifically use what we sometimes have now started calling the AGP channel, but the one that has actin and Golgi. And I'm picking that because it's got two different kinds of intensity here. So now let me adjust this visualization so that everything we look at looks nice and pretty. Yeah, see, sometimes 20 is a good number. Like 20 can be a good number depending on what we're looking at. When in doubt, just check. Don't try to guess. Um, um, so here, if I now run this again, so this is two class Otsu on this image where you can see there are definitely three classes of intensity.
Yep.
There's, the background, the cell, which is like full of phalloidin and stuff. And then for some reason that I'm not totally sure why in these images, it might have been they were playing with a different stain configuration or something, or there's just more bleed through because this is a different microscope than the ones Erin showed in some of the previous ones, where you get more bleed through from the cyto channel. We actually see a fair amount of the nucleus, which is not what we see usually in cell painting, but we can see it here. And like it's clearly there, it exists. Um, and if I look at my image histogram here, like there's definitely like a bump, and then like a third bump going on.
Mhm.
So three class Atsu generally doesn't do what we want. Um, Minimum cross entropy here does a kind of okay job, though that's definitely like image set dependent. Sometimes it does a much worse job because it's just not really designed for cases where you have these three intensity things. But three class Atsu, and in this case, we've said we do want this middle class because what we're trying to do here is actually identify the cells. Um, Three class Atsu does a much better job. And if I go back to that, uh, you can see this other image. Um, like here, the MCE is not doing a very good job at all, but the three class Otsu is like, yeah, no, I see three peaks, like, and I know what to do with the middle one. And so it does a much, much better job of than either of the ones that are designed for sort of two peaks. Um, you might have noticed in the last one that it wasn't quite as clean a separation as this one. And spoiler alert, the next time we talk about thresholding, I will tell you why.
Ooh, can't wait. That's a
Yeah.
cliffhanger.
Dun dun dun. All right. Until then.
Until then, I'll
Yeah.
talk to you later. Can't wait.
Bye.